Hi everyone, welcome to Petroleum Downstream Crash Course. We are reaching the final video of this Crash Course series. And this was just a series to help you gain a better appreciation of petroleum refining processes. Hope you have enjoyed it so far. Now if you watched the last 24 videos on distillation, cracking, yada yada yada, you would have learned the basic components of a refinery. So, how do you put them together in an actual refinery? Well, as you know, refining business is a supply and demand. It's a supply and demand business. So there is no one fixed way to actually design a refinery. It all depends on the region. To design refinery. Okay, so in fact, there are many ways refineries can be designed, and we classify them under a few types. Okay, these types are known. We classify them by the complexity. So we go from the most simple to the most complex. Okay, so the more complex a refinery, the more units you probably have, and of course the more severe the conversion of the bottom of the barrel products. That means your long residues and etc. Okay, so let's go for the most simple kind of refinery. We call this the topping refinery. Of course, you probably have the desalter and heater. So I just draw it as like two circles here. So one heater before the desalter, then the desalter in the center, and the other heater. And you split it up into the light naphtha, the heavy naphtha, Caro, gas oil, long residue, also known as topped crude. Okay, this light naphtha you can split it further into light straight run gasoline and the refinery gas. So this can be separated into the propane, butane, methane, ethane, etc. All these C1 to C4s are here. And light straight run gasoline, we've talked about it before, alright? Now this is a topping refinery. There's only the distillation column and just the necessary separators to separate out all the components. There is absolutely no processing whatsoever. So you can imagine the impurities content in each of these fractions is very high. And nowadays, no one will even want to buy any of these off you. So to make it on spec, you'll probably have to do a little hydro treating. So this is done in what is known as a hydroskimming refinery. So that's a double M there. Okay, hydroskimming. So you'll have the same setup, a very similar setup. Okay. Then you have a charge to the distillation tower. You have your light naphtha, gas. So I'm just going to simplify the separation process here, yeah? Heavy naphtha, Caro, gas oil. When I say gas oil here, is the light gas oil, which is the diesel cut. And then you will have long residue. Now, what do we do with the gas, with the naphthas, and all that kind of stuff? With the naphthas, you send them through the hydrotreater. Sometimes they call it the HDS process. So hydrodesulfurization is one type of hydrotreater. The idea is to get rid of sulfur. So when people write hydrotreater, it's a more generic kind of a name. Alright, so gas oil, you can send it for a HDS as well. And usually when people talk about distillate hydrotreating or distillate hydrodesulfurizer, it usually refers to these two. Okay? It's commonly used to refer to these two. Okay? So, especially for the naphtha, what happens next? You probably send it through reformer. Okay? And once this is done, you go into this thing called a storage and blending, or blending and storage. So what is the blending and storage do? It basically mixes all these fuels, all these cuts in the appropriate proportions so that the specs are met and it's suitable for customer end use. Okay? But as you can imagine, remember that crudes nowadays have a lot of heavy products. Some can go as much as 48% over here. As you have seen in our crude oil assays from ExxonMobil, it's probably not so viable to have a hydroskimming refinery. So what they do is to add the complexity just a little more. We'll have something called a conversion refinery or complex refinery. So again, I'm just going to skip the drawing of the desalter and the heater, the preheat. I'll just draw it as one circle here. Okay, so again we have the gas, light naphtha, heavy naphtha, Caro, gas oil, light. And in this case, you have a vacuum distillation unit. This is atmospheric distillation unit. So both of these will form part of the crude distillation. The whole crude distillation unit, yeah? So, same as before, your naphthas and your distillates really have no problem. You send them through their various hydrotreaters again. Okay, hydrotreat, hydrodesulfurize, you name it, it's more or less the same process. Because sulfur is the one you want to get rid of. And then you send these guys back. Okay, I'm just going to draw it as one box now, for simplicity. And of course, I'll have blending and storage. I just call it BNS so that it can be sold to the end user. And here you have the vacuum gas oil cuts. Sometimes they call it waxy distillate. Okay, what can you do with this? There are a number of things you can do. If I'm not wrong, you can send it into a fluid catalytic cracker, and this you will have to send the streams back to the hydrotreating units respectively, or you can have a alternative, which is the hydrocracker unit. Okay, so the naphtha from the hydrocracker, I need to send it to the hydrodesulfurizer before reforming because there may be still some mercaptans inside. Nonetheless, it is much lower. It is much lower than what is normally inside the naphtha from the crude distillation unit. So no problem there. Okay? So the rest of the stuff, if it's okay for sale, it goes into blending and storage. So again, accordingly, the vacuum residue will go straight into blending and storage. There's no vis breaking there whatsoever. Alright. So this is a conversion refinery, or some people call it a complex refinery. Now let's talk about the most complex kind. So we have our atmospheric tower and the vacuum tower. Vacuum distillation unit, atmospheric distillation unit. So we have the gas, like naphtha, heavy naphtha, Caro. Okay, I'll just call it light gas oil this time. So for simplicity's sake, I'll put the VGO and HGO here. Vacuum gas oil and heavy gas oil. The both cuts will enter here. And the rest I'll just call vacuum residue. Now again, for neatness sake, I will just draw one big hydrotreater here. For the naphtha cuts, distillate hydrotreater. I'm just giving you as many of the names as I can. So these are the same units, they just come under different names. No reason why you want to name them differently, why I want to name them differently, except just to expose you to the different kinds of names you might come across online. It's all pretty much the same stuff. Okay, so it's vacuum gas oil, heavy gas oil. You can send into the FCC HCU hydrocracking unit. And then you'll have some reformers here. Oh yeah, I forgot. Some of the gas you can actually send to the blending and storage section as well. Depends on how you want to sell. Because the butanes, you can blend it. You can blend some of the butanes into the naphtha, as long as it doesn't exceed the reed vapor pressure spec, the RVP. Okay, that's the volatility. Okay, so again, we have the reformer, which increases octane number. And after the distillate hydrotreating, you generally can send it to blending and storage. Okay, FCC HCU can send it to this. Okay, no. Oh yeah, the FCC will go to the distillate hydrotreaters. Okay, and the HCUs, the kerosene and gas oil from the hydrocracking unit. Gas oil, Caro. You can send it straight to the blending and storage if the sulfur requirement isn't that low. I mean, the sulfur requirement isn't that stringent. The rest, I can send it to the hydrotreating from the HCU. Again, because of the mercaptan content. Oh, and the alternative is to send some of the naphtha from the hydrocracking unit into blending and storage. Because if, let's say the sulfur spec is 10 ppm, and my hydrocracking naphtha is about 15 ppm, I'm just pulling numbers out. FCC naphtha maybe it has something like 500 ppm. And hydrotreated naphtha so the spec is 10 ppm. Hydrotreated naphtha, I can put it at 0.5. assuming it's very pure. So hydrotreated naphtha, reformate. Reformate is this one, which will have, you know, the high octane number. Let's say the sulfur spec is 10 ppm. What I can do, because this guy is so dilute in sulfur, I can use hydrotreated naphtha or hydrotreated reformate to mix with naphtha from the FCC unit or naphtha from the HCU unit. And that will help us to meet the 10 ppm requirement. So that's what happens in blending and storage. And for the vacuum residue, there's a number of things I can do. You have the Shell thermal gas oil unit, maybe. You have the vis breaker, and we have coker. All the thermal cracking processes which are used to convert the vacuum residue, they will contribute to it being a complex refinery. And even more complex. This is called a fully complex refinery. Fully complex or deep conversion. Okay? So these guys, again, some of it will produce coke, vis broken residue. I just call it VBR. That's not official, by the way. It's just a short form I use. Then, of course, okay, I'll send whatever is relevant here, the coker gas oils, the vis broken gas oils, naphtha, all here to be hydrotreated to get it saturated and everything to be ready for blending and storage. So this will be into the blending and storage, and of course, I mean, you don't blend coke into anything else, but you can actually sell it. I mean, there are a number of other things you can do with coke. I didn't discuss it, but it's on purpose because I want to simplify things. So well done. We've come to the more or less the end of the petroleum downstream crash course. Hope this course has actually given you more of an appreciation of petroleum refining processes. And what I've just told you for the past 25 videos is basically the skeleton. I've just told you the skeleton of the refinery. If the refinery is a full human body, you can say, I've only shown you the skeleton so far, in the past 10 hours or so. What I have not talked about are the supporting refinery processes, such as the sour water stripping system, the amine stripping system, the sulfur recovery system, which is known as the Claus process, and some of you may know the Scott process as well. I haven't talked about hydrogen generation from, let's say, something like methane. I haven't talked much about the naphtha stabilisation and how these light ends are produced or managed. I haven't talked about continuous catalytic reforming. You can go and read up more about that. And I haven't gone into detail about blending and storage. And what's more, I haven't talked to you about what we can do with this coke. We can actually gasify this coke and generate hydrogen. And do lots of other stuff like Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, which you can make hydrocarbons straight from methanol or something like that. And I have not talked about petrochemicals either, where they talk about ethylene, butylene, the manufacture of polymers, benzene, toluene, and xylenes. Those are very important for, in the petrochemical industry. This is very much part of the downstream. However, I have not talked about it because, I don't want to give a data overload, right? But you can go and read more about that. And in fact, just to mention, since I talked about petrochemicals, there's one more level of complexity I have not talked about here. Now, this is a fully complex refinery, a deep conversion refinery. However, if you put this refinery in proximity to a petrochemical plant, they call it the integrated refinery. That's even one more level of complexity. Okay, so there's lots of other things that I've not talked about. So what I've only given you is a skeleton. I haven't given you the other bits of the refinery. But nevertheless, those are important. But now that you have learned about the skeleton, the rest of the body should be a lot easier to learn. Alright, so I hope this has helped you to appreciate the refinery processes. Thanks for watching, thanks for bearing with me for the last 10 or so hours of me yapping along about refinery processes. Alright, hope to see you again. Bye.